Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to another cozy journey into the past. Tonight, we're stepping into the cluttered parlours of the Victorian era, where people collected the strangest things: mummified toes, beetle wings, and locks of hair woven into jewellery. This is a story of curiosity, eccentricity, and the occasional nap amid a pile of curiosities. So, snuggle into your favourite blanket, dim the lights, and let's drift back to a time when every shelf was a treasure trove of the bizarre. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let the gentle rhythm of this tale carry you into a world of oddities and wonder. Ready? Let's begin. Imagine yourself in a Victorian drawing room, somewhere in London or New York, circa 1870. The air smells of polished wood and lavender, and every surface is crowded with peculiar objects: a glass dome housing a stuffed hummingbird, a tray of iridescent seashells, a velvet box holding a tooth from an unknown creature. The Victorians weren't just collectors, they were obsessed, filling their homes with items that ranged from beautiful to downright macabre. Why did they hoard such strange treasures, and what did these collections reveal about their world? Tonight, we'll wander through the quirky, cluttered world of Victorian collecting, exploring the passions, fads, and oddities that drove people to gather the weirdest things. We'll meet eccentric collectors like the lady who kept a jar of ghost stories, and uncover the cultural forces behind their mania. With each chapter, we'll sink deeper into the cozy, absurd world of taxidermy, fossils, and trinkets, where every object told a story. So let's open the cabinet of curiosities, where the air is thick with dust and the shelves groan with wonders, and begin the tale of why Victorians collected the weirdest things in 10 parts. Part 1. The Rise of the Collecting Craze. Let's begin in the early 19th century, when the Victorian era was dawning and the world was buzzing with discovery. Britain's empire stretched across continents, steam engines roared through cities, and science was unlocking the mysteries of nature. Amid this whirlwind of progress, a peculiar passion took hold: collecting. Victorians didn't just gather stamps or coins, they hoarded everything from ancient bones to pickled specimens, turning their homes into miniature museums. This wasn't a hobby, it was a cultural obsession, a way to make sense of a rapidly changing world. The collecting craze was fueled by the era's thirst for knowledge. The Enlightenment had sparked a love of classification, with scientists like Carl Linnaeus cataloguing plants and animals. By the 1830s, this passion trickled down to ordinary people, who saw collecting as a path to wisdom. A gentleman in Manchester might display a tray of minerals to impress his guests, while a lady in Boston arranged seashells in a parlour cabinet. These collections weren't just decorations, they were proof of intellect, a way to claim a piece of the world's vastness. Picture a scholar in a frock coat peering through a magnifying glass at a beetle's wing, his study lit by a flickering oil lamp, the world outside forgotten. The Victorian obsession with collecting was also tied to exploration. Expeditions to Africa, Asia, and the Americas brought back exotic treasures: ivory carvings, coral fragments, even human skulls. Wealthy collectors sponsored explorers, eager to display their finds. In 1840, Sir William Jardine, a Scottish naturalist, filled his estate with bird skins from Australia, each tagged with a tiny label. His guests, sipping tea in his drawing room, marvelled at the display, their voices low with awe. For the middle class, who couldn't afford such rarities, local markets offered affordable oddities: fossilized ferns, dried starfish, or shards of Roman pottery, each a link to distant lands. Social status played a huge role. In a society obsessed with hierarchy, a collection was a badge of refinement. A well-curated cabinet of curiosities could elevate a merchant to the ranks of the gentry, while a poorly chosen one might draw snickers. In London, the Athenaeum Club was rumoured to have a collection contest, where members showcased their strangest finds, from a narwhal tusk to a shrunken head from Borneo. These displays, held by Candlelight, were as much about bragging rights as science, with gentlemen adjusting their monocles to inspect each item. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the scent of old leather, creating a cozy, if peculiar, atmosphere. The collecting craze wasn't without critics. In 1851, Punch magazine published a cartoon mocking collectomania, showing a man buried under a pile of bones and shells, his wife despairing. Religious leaders warned that collecting could lead to vanity or idolatry, with one vicar calling it a worship of dead things. Yet these voices were drowned out by enthusiasm. By the 1860s, collecting was everywhere, from aristocratic mansions to modest cottages, where a single butterfly in a frame might be a family's pride. Even children caught the bug, trading marbles for bird eggs or snail shells in schoolyards. The objects themselves were astonishingly varied. Natural history was a favorite, with collectors amassing fossils, insects, and taxidermied animals. In 1865, a Bristol doctor displayed a stuffed dodo, claiming it was the last of its kind, though skeptics whispered it was a clever fake. Human relics were also popular, from locks of hair to teeth extracted by dubious dentists. In one macabre case, a London widow kept her husband's finger bone in a velvet box, showing it to guests as a memento mori. These items, arranged on velvet cushions or under glass domes, turned homes into galleries of the strange and beautiful. The collecting craze was also a product of leisure. The Industrial Revolution created a growing middle class with time and money to spare. Collecting became a respectable pastime, a way to fill long evenings. Families spent hours arranging their treasures, dusting shells or labeling bones, their parlours warm with firelight. In one diary, a Leeds clerk described a Sunday spent polishing his collection of agates, the task so calming he dozed off mid-polish. These moments, quiet and deliberate, made collecting a form of meditation, a way to find order in a chaotic world. As we drift through this first chapter, picture a Victorian parlour, its shelves groaning with oddities, the air heavy with the scent of wax and dust. The collecting craze was more than a fad. It was a window into the Victorian soul, a blend of curiosity, pride, and a touch of absurdity. Let's linger here a moment, in the glow of the oil lamp, where every object tells a story, before we move on to the next chapter of our tale. Part 2. The social status of collections. By the mid-19th century, a collection wasn't just a pile of objects. It was a social statement, a way to navigate the rigid hierarchies of Victorian society. In an era where every detail from a glove stitching to a teacup's pattern signaled status, a well-curated collection could elevate a person's standing, while a haphazard one might invite ridicule. Let's step into the drawing rooms and gentlemen's clubs of the era, where collections were displayed with pride and judged with scrutiny, their oddities a mirror of ambition and taste. In London, the heart of the British Empire, collections were a topic of endless fascination. The upper classes used their treasures to assert dominance, filling their mansions with rare and exotic items. Lord Elgin, infamous for the Parthenon marbles, displayed his Greek antiquities in a Mayfair gallery, where guests sipped sherry and debated their origins. These displays, lit by chandeliers, were as much about power as aesthetics, each statue a trophy of imperial reach. The middle class, eager to emulate their betters, turned their parlours into miniature museums, showcasing fossils, coins, or pressed flowers. A Manchester merchant might boast a tray of Egyptian scarabs bought from a travelling dealer as proof of his worldly taste. The social hierarchy of collections was intricate. A collection of natural history, birds, shells, or minerals, was seen as scholarly, favoured by intellectuals like Charles Darwin, whose beetle collection was the talk of Cambridge. Artistic collections like paintings or cameos signalled refinement, popular among ladies who arranged them in velvet-lined cases. Macabre items like skulls or mummified remains were riskier, admired by eccentrics but frowned upon by the pious. In 1860, a Brighton collector was shunned for displaying a cursed mummy hand, rumoured to move at night. Such items, though controversial, added a thrill to social gatherings with guests whispering over their teacups. Women played a significant role in the collecting world, often overlooked by history. While men dominated scientific societies, women created collections of beauty and sentiment. In 1870, Lady Charlotte Schreiber amassed a collection of porcelain fans, each painted with delicate scenes, displayed in her Kensington home. Her guests, fanning themselves in her parlour, admired her taste, their voices soft with envy. Women also collected sentimental items like locks of hair, woven into brooches or letters tied with ribbon. These collections, kept in private drawers, were deeply personal, their objects a link to loved ones. In one touching diary, a Bristol widow described her collection of her children's baby teeth, each stored in a silver box, a treasure of memory. Social gatherings were a stage for collections, with hosts using their treasures to impress. In London, collection parties became fashionable, where guests toured a host's curiosities, from taxidermied bats to ancient coins. These events, held by gaslight, were a blend of education and entertainment, with hosts narrating the story of each item. In 1865, a Glasgow doctor hosted a party to show his collection of tropical shells, regaling guests with tales of Pacific voyages. The evening, filled with clinking glasses and laughter, ended with a guest dozing off beside a conch, lulled by the doctor's droning voice. The collecting craze also sparked a booming market for oddities. London's Portobello Road and Paris's Les Pousses were treasure troves, with stalls selling everything from ostrich eggs to Viking relics. Auction houses like Sotheby's held sales of curiosities, where bidders competed for items like a narwhal tusk or a shrunken head. These markets, bustling with top-hatted gentlemen and bonneted ladies, were a social hub, their air thick with the scent of dust and old leather. For those with modest means, local fairs offered affordable trinkets, glass beads, fossilized leaves, or broken pottery, each a gateway to the collecting world. Class shaped the collecting experience. Wealthy collectors could afford rare items like meteorites or Chinese jade, often commissioning custom cabinets to display them. The working class, with less to spend, collected humbler objects like buttons or bird feathers, arranging them in cigar boxes or on mantelpieces. In 1872, a Liverpool docker proudly showed his collection of river pebbles, each polished to a shine, to his neighbours. These modest collections, though small, carried the same passion, their objects a source of pride in a hard-scrabble life. The social stakes of collecting were high. A poorly chosen collection could mark you as tasteless, while a brilliant one could win admiration. In 1868, a London banker was mocked for his collection of useless bottle caps, his parlour dubbed the junk shop by rivals. He persisted, later selling his collection to a museum, proving his critics wrong. Such stories, shared in clubs and salons, added to the allure of collecting, making it a game of wit and nerve. As we settle into this chapter, imagine a grand drawing room, its walls lined with cabinets, its air heavy with the scent of polish and ambition. Men and women gather around a tray of curiosities, their voices low, their eyes bright with wonder. The collection was more than objects, it was a social ladder, a way to climb the heights of Victorian society. Let's rest here in the glow of the chandelier, where every trinket tells a tale before we continue our journey. Part 3. The Science and Pseudoscience of Collecting. The Victorian collecting craze wasn't just about beauty or status, it was deeply tied to the era's fascination with science and its quirkier cousin, pseudoscience. In a century that saw Darwin's theories and the birth of modern geology, Collecting was a way to explore the natural world, but it also veered into the bizarre, with collectors chasing relics of dubious origin or supernatural allure. Let's wander into the dusty studies and smoky lecture halls where science and superstition collided, their strange treasures a window into the Victorian mind. Science was the spark for many collections, driven by the Enlightenment's love of classification. Naturalists like Sir Joseph Banks amassed specimens, plants, insects, bones, to understand the world's diversity. By the 1840s, this passion spread to amateurs who saw collecting as a path to discovery. A Leeds pharmacist might collect fossils, hoping to uncover a new species, while a Bristol schoolteacher gathered seaweed, pressing it into albums with Latin labels. These collectors, hunched over their desks by lamplight, felt like pioneers, their shelves a map of creation. In 1860, a Manchester clerk discovered a rare ammonite, earning a nod from the Geological Society, his parlour briefly famous. Museums fueled the craze, offering a model for private collections. The British Museum, stuffed with Egyptian mummies and Greek statues, inspired Victorians to create their own cabinets of curiosities. In 1851, the Great Exhibition in London's Crystal Palace showcased wonders from around the world, from dinosaur bones to Indian ivory. Visitors, clutching their guidebooks, left determined to start their own collections, their minds buzzing with possibilities. Local museums, like Oxford's Ashmolean, welcomed amateur finds, turning collectors into citizen scientists. A Dorset farmer's trilobite, donated in 1870, still bears his name, a quiet legacy in stone. Pseudoscience, however, was never far behind. Phrenology, the study of skull shapes to determine character, led to collections of human and animal skulls, often acquired through dubious means. In 1865, a London phrenologist displayed a criminal's skull, claiming it proved a tendency to theft, though skeptics noted it was likely a butcher's discard. Spiritualism, another fad, inspired collections of haunted objects, like Ouija boards or locks of hair from seances. In 1872, a Brighton widow kept a jar labelled Ghost Essence, said to contain the spirit of her late husband, shown to guests with a shiver. These items, arranged under glass, added a gothic thrill to parlours, their stories whispered by firelight. The line between science and superstition was blurry. Some collectors believed fossils were dragon bones, while others saw meteors as omens. In 1868, a Cornwall vicar collected witch stones, pebbles with natural holes, claiming they warded off evil. His collection, displayed in his rectory, drew curious villagers, who left coins for a peek. Mesmerism, a pseudoscience involving magnetic forces, led to collections of charged objects like glass rods or iron filings. A Glasgow doctor, convinced of their healing powers, showed his collection to patients, their visits ending in a doze by his hearth, lulled by his earnest lectures. The collecting craze also intersected with medicine, often in gruesome ways. Doctors collected anatomical specimens, teeth, bones, even preserved organs, displayed in private surgeries. In 1875, a London surgeon kept a jar of gallstones, each labelled with the patient's name, as a record of human endurance. Apothecaries collected exotic remedies like dried scorpions or powdered mummy, believed to cure ailments. These collections, stored in oak cabinets, were both scientific and macabre, their contents a source of fascination and unease. Patients, sipping tea in the waiting room, eyed them warily, their minds drifting to thoughts of mortality. The scientific community wasn't immune to the weird. The Royal Society, a bastion of reason, debated the authenticity of a mermaid skeleton in 1860, later revealed as a monkey-fish hybrid. Amateur collectors, eager for fame, sometimes faked finds, like a unicorn horn that was just a narwhal tusk. These hoaxes, though exposed, added to the era's charm, their stories shared in pubs and parlours. In one famous case, a Devon collector sold a petrified fairy, crafted from clay, to a gullible nobleman, sparking a minor scandal and endless laughter. Collecting was also a way to grapple with time. Fossils and relics connected Victorians to a deep past, while preserved specimens captured the present for future generations. In 1863, a Bath widow created a time capsule collection, including a beetle, a coin, and a lock of her hair, buried in her garden for posterity. These acts, quiet and deliberate, were a form of immortality, a way to leave a mark on a fleeting world. The act of arranging a collection, dusting a shell, labeling a bone, was a meditative ritual, inviting collectors to pause and reflect. As we linger in this chapter, picture a cluttered study, its shelves lined with jars and bones, the air heavy with the scent of dust and mystery. The science and pseudoscience of collecting were a dance of reason and wonder, their treasures a map of the Victorian imagination. Let's rest here, in the glow of the oil lamp, where every object whispers a secret, before we move on. Part 4. The global reach of Victorian collections. The Victorian collecting craze wasn't confined to Britain. It was a global phenomenon, fueled by empire, trade, and exploration. From the jungles of Borneo to the deserts of Egypt, collectors scoured the world for strange and beautiful objects, their treasures a testament to the era's global ambition. Each item, whether a feather from New Zealand or a statue from Greece, told a story of adventure and acquisition, linking parlours to distant lands. Let's travel the world, following the paths of collectors and their curiosities, in a tale of wonder and wanderlust. The British Empire was the engine of the collecting craze, its reach bringing exotic treasures to London's docks. Ships returned from India with ivory carvings, from Africa with ostrich eggs, from Australia with boomerangs and bird skins. Wealthy collectors like Sir Hans Sloane, whose collection formed the British Museum, sponsored expeditions to acquire rarities. In 1845, Sloane's agent sent back a giraffe skeleton from Sudan, displayed in his Chelsea home, to gasps from guests. These items, arranged in glass cases, were trophies of empire, their presence a reminder of Britain's global dominance. Colonial officials were avid collectors, filling their residences with local artifacts. In Calcutta, a British governor collected Mughal miniatures, their delicate paintings a contrast to his dusty office. In Cape Town, a colonial administrator amassed Zulu spears, displaying them above his fireplace, their tips gleaming by firelight. These collections, often acquired through trade or coercion, were a mix of admiration and exploitation, reflecting the complex dynamics of empire. In 1860, a Bombay merchant wrote of trading a clock for a jade idol, his diary noting the uneasy joy of the exchange. The global trade in curiosities created bustling markets. London's East India docks were a hub for exotic goods, with traders selling everything from Chinese porcelain to Pacific coral. In Paris, the Quai Branly market offered African masks and Polynesian shells, their stalls crowded with top-hatted collectors. These markets, alive with haggling and the scent of spices, were a gateway to the world, their wares sparking dreams of distant shores. For those who couldn't travel, catalogues from firms like Liberty & Co. offered curiosities by post, delivering shrunken heads or Tibetan bells to suburban homes. Collectors in other nations joined the craze, adapting it to their cultures. In America, wealthy industrialists like J.P. Morgan collected European antiquities, filling their New York mansions with Roman mosaics and medieval tapestries. In Japan, Meiji-era elites collected Western oddities like taxidermied owls or Victorian clocks, blending them with traditional art. In Russia, aristocrats amassed Fabergé eggs and Siberian fossils, their palaces a riot of opulence. These global collections, though varied, shared a passion for the strange, their objects a bridge between cultures. Explorers were the heroes of the collecting world, their adventures fueling the craze. Figures like Richard Burton and David Livingstone sent back treasures from Africa and Asia, from lion pelts to Buddhist relics. In 1870, Burton's collection of Arabian daggers displayed in his London home drew crowds, their blades catching the gaslight. Amateur explorers too contributed, with missionaries and traders collecting as they travelled. A Devon vicar, posted to Fiji, returned with a collection of carver bowls, his parlour a shrine to the Pacific. The global reach of collecting wasn't without controversy. Many artifacts were looted during colonial conquests, like the Benin bronzes taken by British troops in 1897. These thefts, justified as salvage, sparked debate even then, with some collectors advocating for repatriation. In 1865, a London newspaper criticised the trade in Egyptian mummies, calling it a desecration of the dead. Yet the demand for exotic items persisted, driven by curiosity and greed, their stories a mix of wonder and unease. The global nature of collecting also inspired museums and exhibitions. The Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, founded in 1884, housed thousands of artifacts, from Maori cloaks to Amazonian arrows donated by collectors worldwide. These institutions, with their polished floors and glass cases, were temples to the collecting craze, inviting visitors to marvel at the world's diversity. In one diary, a Glasgow girl described visiting a museum's curiosity room, falling asleep on a bench amid spears and shells, lulled by the hum of voices. As we drift through this chapter, imagine a bustling dockside market, its stalls piled with treasures from every corner of the globe, the air thick with the scent of tar and sandalwood. The collecting craze was a global adventure, its objects a map of the Victorian world, each with a story to tell. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the market, where every trinket whispers of far-off lands, before we continue. Part 7, The Legacy of the Collecting Craze. By the late 19th century, the Victorian collecting craze was waning, as new hobbies and technologies shifted attention elsewhere. Yet, its legacy endured, shaping museums, science, and the way we see the world's wonders. The strange collections of the era, from beetle wings to mummified toes, left a mark on culture, their stories a testament to curiosity and creativity. Let's reflect on the lasting impact of the collecting craze as we drift toward the end of our tale, savoring the quiet moments it left behind. The most tangible legacy was in museums, many of which grew from private collections. Sir Hans Sloane's treasures, donated in 1753, became the British Museum, while the Pitt Rivers and Ashmolean museums were built on Victorian donations. These institutions, with their polished floors and glass cases, preserved the era's passion for discovery, inviting generations to marvel at shells, bones, and relics. In 1890, a London schoolboy visited the Natural History Museum, sketching a dinosaur skeleton in his notebook, a moment sparked by the collecting craze. These museums, warm with the hum of visitors, remain a living tribute to Victorian curiosity. The collecting craze also advanced science. Amateur collectors, with their fossils and specimens, contributed to fields like paleontology and entomology. In 1865, a Dorset quarryman's ichthyosaur fossil helped scientists understand prehistoric life. His find, displayed in Oxford, women collectors, often excluded from formal science, made their mark through donations. Mary Anning, a Lyme Regis fossil hunter, supplied museums with plesiosaur skeletons, her finds shaping early geology. These contributions, born in dusty parlours, laid the groundwork for modern science, their legacy etched in stone. The craze influenced art and literature, capturing the era's imagination. Painters like John Everett Millais depicted collectors' parlours, their canvases glowing with shells and taxidermy. Writers like Charles Dickens wove collections into their novels. Mr. Venus, in Our Mutual Friend, ran a shop of bones and curiosities, his cluttered world a mirror of the times. These works, read by firelight, immortalized the collecting craze, their stories a soothing escape. In 1875, a collection of Dickens's letters, filled with references to oddities, was published, its pages a bedtime favorite for Victorian readers. The legacy extended to everyday life. The Victorian love of collecting inspired hobbies like stamp collecting and scrapbooking, still popular today. In the 20th century, the craze resurfaced in new forms, from antique hunting to vintage toys, each a nod to the era's passion. Today, collectors of vinyl records or retro games echo their Victorians' forebears, their shelves a modern cabinet of curiosities. In one modern diary, a New York artist described her collection of 1950s buttons, calling it "My Victorian Heart," a link to the past. The collecting craze also taught a deeper lesson, the value of curiosity. In an era of industrial progress, collecting was a way to stay connected to nature, history, and the human spirit. The act of gathering a shell or dusting a fossil was a reminder to look closely, to find wonder in the small things. In one poignant letter, a Glasgow collector wrote, "My treasures are my eyes, showing me the world's secrets." His words, penned by gaslight, capture the essence of the craze, a celebration of discovery in a changing world. The legacy wasn't without shadows. The colonial roots of many collections built on looting and exploitation sparked debates about repatriation that continue today. In 1890, a London scholar called for the return of African artifacts, a voice ahead of its time. These discussions, though painful, are part of the craze's legacy, urging us to collect with respect and care. The Victorian passion for oddities, at its best, was a love of the world's diversity, a desire to hold its wonders close. As we close this chapter, imagine a quiet museum gallery, its cases glowing with relics, the air heavy with the scent of history and hope. The collecting craze may have faded, but its spirit lives on in every fossil, every story, every moment of wonder. Let's rest here, in the soft light of the gallery, where the world feels vast and the air is filled with the promise of discovery, before we continue our story. Part 8. The emotional power of collections. The Victorian collecting craze wasn't just about objects. It was about emotion, with each item a vessel for memory, longing, or love. In an era of rigid norms and rapid change, collections were a way to hold on to the past, celebrate the present, or dream of the future, their treasures a source of comfort and connection. From locks of hair to pressed flowers, these objects carried the weight of human experience, their stories a soothing thread in the fabric of life. Let's explore the emotional heart of collecting, stepping into the lives of those who cherished their curiosities. Sentimental collections were the most poignant, their objects a link to loved ones. Locks of hair, often woven into jewelry or framed in lockets, were a Victorian obsession, their strands a tangible memory. In 1860, a London mother kept a curl from her son's first haircut, displaying it in a silver frame beside her bed. The lock, touched nightly, was a comfort during his years at sea, its softness a reminder of his laughter. Other sentimental items included baby shoes, christening spoons, or letters tied with ribbon, each stored in velvet boxes, their presence a balm for the heart. Collections also captured moments of joy. Wedding keepsakes, like dried bouquets or cake figurines, were cherished by brides, their parlours a shrine to love. In 1870, a Bristol newlywed created a collection of happiness relics, including a seashell from her honeymoon and a ticket from her first opera. Her diary, written by firelight, described arranging these items as a song of my heart, a ritual that soothed her soul. These collections, dusted with care, were a celebration of life's bright moments, their beauty a source of quiet pride. Grief fueled some of the most moving collections. Mourning jewelry, made from jet or hair, was a Victorian staple worn to honour the dead. In 1865, a Manchester widow collected her late husband's pocket watches, their ticking a reminder of his presence. She showed them to her children, telling stories of his kindness, their evenings ending in tears and embraces. Other collectors kept memento mori, like skulls or coffin nails, as a meditation on mortality. These objects, though somber, were a way to process loss, their presence, a quiet comfort in a world of change. Collections also reflected dreams and aspirations. Young collectors, inspired by tales of adventure, gathered objects from imagined worlds, coral for a sailor's dream, feathers for a poet's flight. In 1872, a Leeds boy collected explorer relics, like pebbles and twigs, pretending they were from the Nile or Amazon. His mother, indulgent, gave him a tin box for his treasures, their evenings spent weaving tales by the fire. These collections, small but precious, were a spark of imagination, their objects a gateway to possibility. The emotional power of collections was heightened by their intimacy. Unlike public displays, many were private, kept in drawers or hidden cabinets, shared only with trusted friends. In 1868, a Bath spinster showed her collection of pressed violets to her niece, each flower a memory of a garden walk. The niece, years later, wrote of the moment, its tenderness lingering like perfume. These private collections, touched in quiet moments, were a form of therapy, a way to hold on to what mattered most. The act of collecting was itself an emotional journey. Sorting a tray of shells or pinning a butterfly was a way to find peace, to impose order on a turbulent world. Families gathered for these tasks, their parlours warm with gaslight, their hands busy with brushes and pins. In one diary, a Glasgow father described arranging his daughter's feather collection, their evenings a haven of love amid factory smoke. These moments, filled with care and connection, made collecting a ritual of the heart. The emotional power of collections inspired literature. Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone, 1868, centered on a cursed gem, its story a metaphor for the hold of objects on the heart. The novel, read by lamplight, was a bedtime favorite, its mystery lulling readers into dreams. In poetry, Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote of a locket with a lover's hair, its strands a chain of memory. These works, with their gentle cadence, captured the emotional weight of collecting, their words a mirror of the Victorian soul. As we settle into this chapter, picture a quiet bedroom where a widow touches a lock of hair by candlelight, her heart lifted by its softness, her mind drifting to memories of love. The collection was a vessel for the soul, its objects a comfort in a world of change. Let's rest here, in the glow of the candle, where the air is filled with the scent of lavender and the promise of connection before we continue. Part 9, the social dynamics of collecting in the Victorian era, wasn't just a personal passion, it was a social dance, shaped by the rules of class, gender, and community. Each collection was a performance, its objects chosen to reflect the collector's identity and relationships, from the grand displays of aristocrats to the humble treasures of workers. These dynamics, filled with rivalry, collaboration, and subtle humor, made collecting a vibrant part of social life. Let's explore how collections shaped Victorian relationships, stepping into the parlors and clubs where curiosities sparked connection and competition. Class was a central force in collecting, with different expectations for different ranks. Aristocrats used their collections to assert power, filling their estates with treasures like Chinese porcelain or Egyptian obelisks. In 1860, the Duke of Devonshire displayed his collection of rare gems at Chatsworth, his guests marvelling by chandelier light. The middle class, eager to rise, curated collections of fossils or books, their parlours a stage for ambition. A Birmingham factory owner might show his coin collection to clients, hoping to impress with his taste. The working class, with less to spend, collected small items, buttons, shells or feathers, arranged with pride on kitchen shelves. In 1875, a London seamstress displayed her collection of ribbon scraps, each a memory of a dress, to her neighbour's delight. Gender shaped the collecting world in profound ways. Men, seen as the public face of science, dominated fields like natural history, their collections of bones or beetles a mark of intellect. Women, often confined to domestic roles, excelled at sentimental or artistic collections like pressed flowers or porcelain. In 1868, Emily Dickinson, the American poet, collected botanical specimens, pressing them into albums with poetic labels. Her collection, kept in her Amherst home, was a quiet rebellion against gender norms, its beauty a source of pride. Women's collections, shared in parlours over tea, were a form of social currency, their objects a way to assert influence. Social gatherings were a showcase for collections, with hosts using their treasures to dazzle. Curiosity parties, popular in London and New York, invited guests to view a host's oddities, from taxidermied bats to Roman rings. In 1870, a Glasgow professor hosted a party to show his meteorite collection, regaling guests with tales of falling stars. The evening, filled with clinking glasses and gasps, ended with a guest dozing by the fire, lulled by the professor's voice. These events, warm with candlelight, were a blend of education and ego, with hosts vying for the title of best collection. Rivalry was a key dynamic, with collectors competing for the rarest finds. In 1865, two London gentlemen waged a fossil feud, each scouring Dorset cliffs for the best ammonite. Their rivalry, reported in the Times, ended with a joint donation. To a museum, their friendship restored over sherry. Clubs like the Geological Society fueled these contests, their meetings a mix of debate and display. Women, too, competed, often in subtler ways. In Brighton, a ladies' shell club held beauty contests for collections, with members voting on the prettiest arrangement, their laughter filling the parlour. Collaboration was equally important, with collectors sharing knowledge and specimens. The entomological societies swapped butterflies by post, their packages crisscrossing Europe. In 1872, a Devon collector sent a rare moth to a friend in Manchester, sparking a lifelong correspondence. Women's clubs, like the London Botanical Society, exchanged seeds and cuttings, their meetings a haven of camaraderie. These exchanges, with their handwritten notes and careful packing, were a form of social glue, binding collectors in a shared passion. The social dynamics of collecting weren't without tension. A poorly chosen collection could spark ridicule, while a brilliant one could breed envy. In 1868, a London banker's collection of odd spoons was mocked as tasteless, his parlour shunned by rivals. He later gifted the spoons to a charity, winning back respect with his generosity. These dramas, shared in salons and taverns, added to the craze's allure, making collecting a game of wit and heart. As we settle into this chapter, picture a candlelit club where collectors gather around a table of curiosities, their voices low, their eyes bright with rivalry and friendship. The collection was a social bond, its objects a bridge between hearts in a stratified world. Let's rest here, in the warmth of the club, where the air is filled with the scent of cigar smoke and the promise of connection, before we continue. Part 10. The decline and revival of the collecting craze. The Victorian collecting craze, for all its passion, began to fade by the late 19th century as new technologies, fashions and attitudes reshaped leisure. Yet like a well-preserved fossil, its spirit endured, reviving in new forms and leaving a legacy of wonder. The weird collections of the era, from beetle wings to mummified toes, taught lessons of curiosity and care that resonate today. Let's explore the decline of the craze, its revivals, and the timeless gifts it left behind as we drift toward the end of our soothing tale. The decline began with the rise of mass production, which flooded markets with cheap goods, diluting the thrill of unique finds. By the 1890s, department stores like Harrods sold instant collections, like boxes of shells or coins, reducing collecting to a transaction. The telephone and telegraph, shrinking the world, shifted attention to instant communication, making the slow hunt for curiosities seem quaint. In 1895, a Punch cartoon showed a collector ignoring his telephone to dust a fossil captioned "the last of his kind." The image, shared in parlors, marked the end of an era. Fashion also shifted, with the arts and crafts movement favoring simplicity over clutter. The cluttered Victorian parlor, once a badge of taste, was mocked as stuffy, its cabinets replaced by minimalist shelves. Young collectors turned to new hobbies, like photography or cycling, their energy focused on the modern. In 1900, a London diarist lamented that her son preferred a camera to her butterfly collection, a sign of changing times. The rise of professional science, with its specialized labs, sidelined amateurs whose finds were now seen as childish. Despite its decline, the collecting craze never vanished. In rural areas where traditions lingered, farmers and shopkeepers continued to gather shells or stones, their mantelpieces a nod to the past. In artistic circles, figures like William Morris collected medieval manuscripts, their passion a quiet rebellion against modernity. In 1890, Morris displayed his illuminated books in his Hammersmith home, their pages glowing by lamplight, a reminder of the craze's beauty. The craze saw revivals in later centuries, each tied to nostalgia or discovery. The 1920s saw a boom in antique collecting, with flappers hunting for Victorian trinkets. The 1960s counterculture revived natural history, with hippies collecting crystals or feathers. Today, the craze lives on in flea markets, eBay, and Instagram, where collectors share vintage toys, vinyl records, or taxidermy. In one modern example, a Brooklyn artist collects 19th century buttons, her Instagram posts echoing the passion of a Victorian parlor. These revivals, digital but heartfelt, carry the spirit of the era, their treasures a link to the past. The legacy of the collecting craze is profound. It shaped museums from the Smithsonian to the Louvre, preserving the world's wonders for all. It advanced science, with amateur finds like Mary Anning's fossils rewriting history. It inspired art, literature, and even fashion, with Victorian-inspired jewelry still popular today. Most importantly, it taught the value of curiosity, urging us to look closely at the world. In one poignant diary, a London collector wrote, "My shells are my stars, guiding me through the night." Her words, penned by gaslight, capture the craze's heart, a love of the strange and beautiful. The craze's legacy also includes a call to collect ethically. The colonial thefts of the era, like the Benin bronzes, sparked debates about repatriation, urging modern collectors to act with respect. In 1900, a British scholar advocated returning looted artifacts, a voice that echoes in today's museums. This lesson, born in Victorian parlors, reminds us to cherish the world's treasures without harm. As we close this final chapter, imagine a quiet Victorian parlour, its shelves glowing with curiosities, the air heavy with the scent of dust and dreams. A collector touches a shell, her heart lifted by its story, her mind drifting to distant shores. The collecting craze may have faded, but its spirit lives on in every object, every story, every moment of wonder. Let's rest here in the soft light of the parlour, where the world feels infinite and the air is filled with the promise of discovery as our story comes to an end. Thank you for joining me on this quirky journey through the Victorian era. If you enjoyed drifting through the world of weird collections, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps us share these cozy stories with more sleepy history lovers like you. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss a tale, whether it's about forgotten passions or eccentric historical quirks. In the comments, share your thoughts. Would you have collected fossils or fairy jars in the 1800s? And if you know a friend who'd love to relax with a bit of history, share this video with them. For more soothing stories, check out our playlist of bedtime tales linked below. Now, close your eyes, let the world fade away, and drift off to the gentle rhythm of the past. Good night.